The air was thick with smoke. Screams echoed through the school auditorium as students pushed against the locked doors. On the other side of the building, a fire raged, swallowing an entire hallway in orange flame. Trapped inside a classroom was the principal's daughter. Pale face pressed against the glass, her hands banging for help as black smoke curled around her. Teachers froze. Students cried. Security guards hesitated, but someone moved. A boy, 16, clothes torn, shoes worn thin, his backpack still on his shoulder as if he had nowhere else to go. His name was Aaron Miller, a homeless kid, an outcast, expelled just hours earlier, and now, the same boy the world had thrown away was the only one running toward the fire. But minutes before this moment, Aaron was just another forgotten face. In a cruel system, Aaron Miller's life was lived in shadows. At 16, he already carried the weight of battles most grown men would never survive. Nights were spent in shelters that smelled of damp blankets and stale bread. Sometimes, when the shelters filled, he curled up under a bridge with only the hum of passing cars to keep him awake. Yet every morning he showed up at school, same hallway, same cracked sneakers, same stubborn hope. Aaron loved basketball. On the court, he wasn't the homeless kid. He wasn't the charity case. He was fast, sharp, alive. The ball in his hands felt like a promise that maybe one day he'd wear a college jersey instead of hand-me-down clothes. But outside the court, the world never let him forget who they thought he was. Students whispered when he walked by. Teachers spoke to him in clipped tones, suspicious before he even opened his mouth. Even the cafeteria workers paused before handing him a tray, as though his hunger were something shameful. He kept quiet. He swallowed it all. Because deep down, Aaron believed things would get better. He believed effort mattered. He believed kindness would return someday. What he didn't know was that this was the last week life would ever feel remotely normal. It began with small humiliations. A locker vandalized with the word rat. A backpack dumped into the trash. A basketball mysteriously deflated before practice. Students laughed, teachers shrugged. But then came the stares. The whispers about missing money from the school fundraiser. The way teachers suddenly hushed when he walked into the room. Aaron told himself it was nothing. Just noise. Just kids being cruel. Until one morning he entered the gym and found his duffel bag unzipped, its contents scattered. His only extra shirt stolen. His only pair of socks gone. And in the middle of the mess, crumpled bills. The missing fundraiser money. He froze. Heart pounding. The gym doors creaked open. A group of students gasped. And just like that, Aaron wasn't a boy anymore. He was the suspect. By lunch, the whispers turned into pointed fingers. By evening, the principal's office became a courtroom. Aaron sat there with his hands trembling, trying to explain, trying to breathe. But the adult's eyes were cold. The verdict was already written. He was thrown out of school. No hearing, no second chance, no proof. That night, Aaron lay on a thin mattress in the shelter, staring at the cracked ceiling. Dreams of college, of basketball, of belonging, all crumbling, in silence. He didn't know it yet, but the world's cruelty hadn't finished with him. The real storm was only beginning. The next morning, the world moved on. Students filled the hallways. Teachers carried clipboards. Bells rang as if nothing had happened. But Aaron Miller was gone. His absence lingered like a shadow, mentioned in whispers, erased from attendance lists. Yet for Aaron, the wound was wide open. He still passed the school gates every morning on his way to the shelter. He couldn't stop himself. He lingered by the chain-link fence watching the basketball team practice without him. His jersey, his only jersey, was now worn by someone else. The ball bounced against the polished floor like a heartbeat he could no longer touch. Sometimes he caught glimpses of classmates pointing. Some smirked, others avoided his eyes. To them, he wasn't just homeless anymore. He was a thief, a liar. The poor weight of the false accusation pressed harder each day. Teachers who once gave him a nod now looked through him as if he didn't exist. Shop owners along the street whispered when he entered. Even the shelter manager hesitated before handing him food as if guilt were contagious. Aaron tried to fight back. He begged the principal for another hearing, proof, anything. But the principal's eyes were heavy with disappointment, not curiosity. In his office, Aaron wasn't a boy. He was a file, a problem to be erased. The injustice cut deeper because Aaron knew what he had lost. Basketball scouts were scheduled to visit the school that month. A single game could have changed his life. Now he wasn't even allowed to touch the court, and yet Aaron refused to crumble. Every night in the shadow of the shelter's stairwell, he dribbled an old half-flat basketball. The rhythm against concrete was his way of saying, I'm still here, but cruelty has a way of multiplying. One afternoon, as Aaron walked past a convenience store, a police cruiser pulled up. The officer stepped out, hand resting on his belt. A wallet had been reported stolen, and of all the kids in the neighborhood, guess who matched the description? Aaron's chest tightened. He tried to explain, but his words dissolved under the officer's glare. His backpack was searched, his pockets emptied. Strangers stared as if watching a criminal caught in the act. Nothing was found, no apology was given, just a dismissive grunt as the officer drove away, leaving Aaron standing alone, humiliated. The message was clear. Truth didn't matter. His skin, his poverty, his homelessness, those were enough to convict him in the eyes of the world. The route. Cracks in Aaron's hope deepened, but still he held on. He thought of his mother, long gone, who once told him, "Never let them decide who you are." He repeated those words like armor, but the worst betrayal was yet to come. One evening, as he passed the schoolyard, he overheard students laughing. They spoke his name, mocking, twisting the story. They said he had been caught red-handed with stolen money. They said he bragged about it. They said he was dangerous. And in the middle of the group laughing with them was his former teammate, the one who used to call him brother, the one who had borrowed his socks, his shirt, his trust. Aaron felt his stomach drop. The betrayal cut sharper than the accusation itself. He wanted to scream, to tell them the truth, but the world wasn't listening. Days bled into nights. Hunger gnawed at him. Shame followed him. Yet something inside refused to die. He kept moving, kept watching the school from a distance, kept dribbling that battered basketball in the dark. He didn't know why. He stayed near a place that had destroyed him. Maybe it was stubbornness, maybe hope, or maybe because deep down a storm was building, one that would turn everything upside down. That storm arrived the following week. It was a bright morning, the kind that usually promised ordinary things. Classes, laughter, routine. But by noon, smoke began to curl from the auditorium's roof. Sirens hadn't arrived yet. Students poured into the hallways in panic. Teachers shouted, herding them toward the exits. But not everyone made it out. The principal's daughter, trapped, sighed. And when Aaron saw the flames, saw her face pressed against the glass, something inside him snapped. He didn't care about rules anymore. He didn't care that the school had expelled him, branded him, betrayed him. He only knew one thing. She needed help, and no one else was moving. Flames painted the walls orange. Smoke rolled through the hallways like a living beast. The air was thick, choking, hot enough to blister skin. Students screamed from outside, pressed against the gates, watching helplessly. Teachers shouted, calling for help, but none dared to step inside. The fire was too strong, the risk too high. But Aaron moved. He shoved through the crowd, ignoring the gasps and whispers that followed. His feet hit the steps two at a time. His lungs filled with smoke the moment he crossed the threshold. Still he pressed on. The school he once loved now felt like a furnace, every corner glowing with flame. He ran past lockers collapsing from heat, past banners curling into ash. His eyes stung, his skin burned, but he kept his focus. Classroom window where he had seen her face. Principal's daughter. He was only 12, small, terrified, pounding on the glass. Fire circled her like a predator. Aaron kicked. The door, once, twice, it wouldn't budge. The handle was molten hot. His palms seared, pain ripped through him, but he didn't stop. He threw his shoulder into the door with all his strength. It cracked. He pushed again. The wood splintered. He forced his way in, swallowed by smoke. The girl was coughing, eyes wide with terror. Her tiny frame shook as the flames closed in. Aaron grabbed her hand. It was trembling, ice-cold despite the heat. He pulled her close, shielding her with his body. "Move!" his mind screamed. "Move now!" They staggered toward the door, but the hallway behind them was already engulfed. Fire roared louder, greedy, blocking their escape. For a split second, Aaron froze. The only path left was a narrow side corridor, already filling with smoke. He knew it was a gamble. There was no choice. He lifted the girl into his arms and ran. His shoes slipped on the burning floor. His chest screamed for air, his vision blurred. Still, he pushed forward. Ceiling groaned above. Aisles crashed down. Sparks rained over them. Aaron ducked, shielding her head, taking the brunt of the fall across his own back. The impact ripped through him, but he never loosened his grip. The exit was near. He could see light. A door barely open just feet away, but between him and freedom, a wall of flame rose, thick and merciless. For 1 second, Aaron hesitated. Then he ran straight through. The fire clawed at his arms, his legs, his back. He clenched his teeth and kept running until his body slammed against the final door. It burst open. Fresh air rushed in like salvation. He stumbled out into daylight, collapsing onto the pavement, the girl still in his arms. The crowd gasped. Students screamed. Teachers froze. And at the center of it all lay Aaron Miller, skin blistered, coughing blood, clutching the principal's daughter as if she were his own sister. For a long moment, the world was silent. Then the principal pushed through the crowd, falling to his knees beside his daughter. Tears streaked his face as he pulled her close, realizing she was alive because of the boy he had thrown away. Aaron's vision dimmed. His breaths came shallow, but he didn't care. The girl was safe. That was enough. His last thought before the darkness swallowed him was simple. They'll never forget this. And they wouldn't. The ambulance lights painted the courtyard, red and blue. Sirens wailed, but the crowd was silent. Every student, every teacher, every parent stood frozen, watching the boy they had rejected lying on a stretcher. Aaron's body was burned, his skin blistered, his shirt torn, blackened from smoke. Oxygen mask pressed against his face. His chest rose in shallow, painful bursts. The principal's daughter clung to his arm, refusing to let go. Her tears streaked through the soot on her face. She had been given back her life, and she knew exactly who had given it. The same boy they had called worthless. The same boy they had cast out hours earlier. The principal's eyes were wet, his hands trembling as he stood over Aaron. Power, pride, authority, none of it mattered now. He had built his career on strictness, on pushing away those he deemed worthy. And yet, in his darkest hour, the life of his only child had been saved by the very boy he had condemned. But guilt is heavier than fire. He tried to speak. No words came. The crowd saw him break, saw the mask of control fall away. He was not a leader now. He was just a father, humbled, ashamed. Aaron was rushed into the ambulance. Doors slammed. Sirens wailed again, carrying him into the night. The school remained still. The fire had been put out, but the smoke lingered, thick and suffocating, as if refusing to let the people forget what they had witnessed. Days turned into weeks. News spread across the town. The story made headlines. Homeless. Boy saves principal's daughter. Images of Aaron, frail, burned yet alive, appeared on television screens and newspapers. Across social media, he became a symbol. But symbols come with weight. The hospital bills mounted. His mother sat by his side, exhausted, hands clasped in prayer, hoping her son would wake. Strangers visited, leaving flowers, cards, money. Some wept at his bedside, confessing their shame for judging him too quickly. The students who once mocked him lined up outside his hospital room, too afraid to step in, too guilty to face the boy who had risked everything when they had done nothing. And the principal, he visited every night. He stood at the foot of the bed, silent, watching Aaron's chest rise and fall. Sometimes he reached out to touch his arm, but always stopped himself, as if unworthy of forgiveness. When Aaron finally opened his eyes, the room filled with tears. His body was scarred, his future uncertain, but his spirit was unbroken. The first thing he asked was not for help, not for pity, but for school books. He wanted to keep learning. He wanted his dream back. The principal broke then. He offered a scholarship, a home, anything Aaron needed, but the boy only nodded, quietly, humbly, because for Aaron, it was never about revenge. It was about proving that even the forgotten have worth. Months later, Aaron walked back into the school he had been thrown out of. His steps were slow, careful, his body still healing. The halls went silent. Students turned to look. Teachers lowered their eyes. The whispers of mockery were gone. They all stood in the presence of the boy who had walked through fire, not just for himself, but for the very people who had abandoned him. Some cried, some clapped, some bowed their heads in shame. The principal's daughter ran to him, holding his hand tightly, refusing to let go. And for once, the crowd did not laugh. They only watched. Because, in that moment, Aaron Miller was no longer just a homeless boy. He was a reminder, a mirror, a question. If the world can throw away a child like him, who will they throw away next? My dear, if this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Your support helps bring more powerful stories of injustice and hope to light.